The very first thing Mia noticed about Hawaii was the silence. The resort was alive with music, laughter, and palm trees moving in the ocean wind. Yet inside her was a strange silence. Everything looked perfect. White flowers floated in a stone fountain. Warm lanterns lined the walkway. Beyond the gardens, the Pacific stretched beneath the afternoon sun, blue enough to make the world seem untouched by ordinary problems. Ethan smiled and placed his hand against Mia's lower back. "Welcome to our honeymoon." Mia laughed softly. "Our honeymoon," she repeated. She had imagined this moment for months. Marriage represented a beginning to her, a clean page after years of uncertainty. She had pictured waking beside Ethan in a beautiful place, drinking coffee together, exploring beaches, and returning home with photographs they would someday show their children. She wanted desperately to feel only happiness. Instead, she felt watched. Ethan decided where they would have dinner without asking what she wanted. When Mia mentioned a restaurant she had seen online, he dismissed it. "Too crowded. I already made reservations somewhere better." Mia smiled. "Okay." She told herself it was thoughtful. Later, while she unpacked, her phone buzzed. A message from her friend Lauren appeared. Mia smiled. Ethan noticed. "Who is that?" "Lauren. She wanted to know if we arrived safely. Can you answer later?" Mia looked at him. "Why?" Ethan shrugged, but his expression changed. "It's our honeymoon, Mia. I just don't want you spending the whole trip on your phone." There was nothing obviously cruel about the words. Yet Mia felt the first pressure of something she could not name. She put the phone away. "You're right." Ethan kissed her forehead. "That's my girl." The affection reassured her, almost enough to erase the discomfort. That evening they dressed for dinner. Mia wore a pale blue dress Ethan had once told her looked beautiful. At the restaurant, everything was elegant, from the candles to the ocean view. For a while they were happy. They talked about their future. Ethan spoke about buying a house. Mia imagined decorating it. They laughed over dessert. Then Mia mentioned that Lauren wanted to video call the next morning. Ethan's smile disappeared. "Do we have to?" Mia hesitated. "She's my best friend." "I know." "Then why does it bother you?" Ethan leaned back. "It doesn't bother me. I just thought this trip was supposed to be about us." His voice was calm, but Mia heard the accusation beneath it. "I'm not trying to ruin anything. I never said you were." The rest of dinner became quiet. On the drive back, Ethan barely spoke. Mia stared through the window at the dark Pacific Ocean, wondering whether she had caused the tension. Inside the villa, she apologized. Ethan looked at her before pulling her into his arms. "I'm sorry too," he whispered. "I love you." Mia closed her eyes against his shoulder. "I love you too." For a moment, everything felt normal again. But later, after Ethan fell asleep, Mia stepped onto the balcony. The Pacific moved beneath the moonlight, and endless. She wrapped her arms around herself and listened to the waves. Then, too softly to hear, she whispered the thought she had been refusing to admit. "I think I made a terrible mistake." Behind her, the bedroom remained dark. Mia did not know that the honeymoon she imagined as her happiest chapter was already becoming something else. The thought stayed with Mia long after sunrise. By morning, she had almost convinced herself that the previous night had been nothing more than nerves. Ethan was cheerful again, ordering coffee while sunlight spilled across the villa. He kissed her cheek and suggested a private boat excursion. Mia smiled. For the next 2 days, the honeymoon looked exactly like the dream she had imagined. They ate expensive dinners beneath strings of lights, walked along quiet beaches, and took photographs beside waterfalls. In every picture, Ethan looked devoted. Mia looked happy. Friends back home would have seen nothing unusual. But photographs could not capture what happened after the cameras disappeared. Ethan began asking questions. "Who was your first serious boyfriend?" Mia laughed nervously. "Why are you asking?" "I'm curious." She mentioned a man named Lucas, someone she had dated years earlier. Ethan's expression barely changed. "Are you still in contact with him?" "No." The answer came quickly. Ethan studied her. "That was fast." "What does that mean?" "Nothing." But it clearly meant something. Later, while Mia was getting ready for dinner, Ethan asked to see her phone. She refused. He frowned. Why are you hiding things? I'm not hiding anything. Then why can't I look? Because it's my phone. The room suddenly felt smaller. Ethan walked toward the balcony and stared outside. I don't understand why you are acting defensive. Mia followed him. I'm not acting defensive. I'm trying to have some privacy. He turned. Privacy from your husband? Being married doesn't mean you own me. The words escaped before Mia could soften them. Silence filled the room. Ethan's face changed. He did not shout. He did not raise his hand. Somehow that made his reaction more frightening. His eyes became completely cold. You should be careful about what you say to me. Mia felt her stomach tighten. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Ethan smiled. Forget it. We're supposed to be enjoying ourselves. He walked over, kissed her forehead, and acted as though nothing had happened. Mia forced herself to smile. At dinner, she barely touched her food. That evening, after returning to the resort, Mia walked alone toward the lobby. She needed air. She needed distance, even if only for a few minutes. A resort employee named Leilani noticed her near the entrance. She had seen the couple several times since their arrival and remembered how cheerful Mia had looked on their first day. Now something was different. Leilani approached carefully. Are you okay? Mia immediately smiled. Yes, I'm fine. Leilani looked at her hands. They were trembling. If you need anything, you can tell me. Mia swallowed. I know. Thank you. She wanted to say more. She wanted to explain the questions, the accusations, and the strange fear she could not understand. Instead, she glanced toward the hallway. Ethan was standing there, watching. Mia lowered her eyes. Leilani followed her gaze and understood that something was wrong, even though Mia had said nothing. When Mia returned to the villa, Ethan was waiting. Where were you? I went for a walk. Without telling me? Mia said nothing. That night, she lay awake beside him, listening to the ocean beyond the window. The honeymoon was still beautiful, but beneath the beauty, something dangerous was taking shape, and Mia was beginning to realize that the coldness in Ethan's eyes had not been an accident. It had been a warning. She stared into the darkness, remembering the first time he had made her feel afraid. She wondered whether she was imagining the danger or finally seeing it clearly. For the first time, the warning stayed with Mia the following morning. She woke before Ethan and watched the Hawaiian sunlight crawl across the curtains. For several minutes, she listened to his breathing and wondered whether she should tell someone what had happened. But fear and doubt tangled together. Perhaps she was exaggerating. Perhaps marriage did require adjustments she had never understood. Then her phone vibrated. One message. The name on the screen was Lucas Reed. Mia froze. Lucas had been part of her life long before Ethan. They had dated during college, and although the relationship had ended years earlier, they had remained occasionally connected. There had never been another secret romance after their breakup. Still, Mia had deliberately avoided mentioning him to Ethan. She knew Ethan would ask questions. She knew he would not like the answers. Lucas had recently learned about the wedding through a mutual friend. His message was simple. Hope you're happy, Mia. I heard you got married. Mia stared at it. Before she could respond, Ethan opened his eyes. Who's texting you? Mia turned the phone face down. Just someone from home. Ethan sat up. Who? It's nothing. His expression hardened. Show me. Mia's heart began beating faster. No. The word surprised both of them. Ethan extended his hand. Mia, give me the phone. It's private. Why would you need privacy from me? Because it's my conversation. Ethan stood. You're hiding something. No, I'm not. Then prove it. Mia stepped backward. I don't have to prove everything to you. For several seconds, Ethan stared at her. The room seemed colder despite the morning outside. Finally, Mia unlocked the phone but kept it close to her chest. Ethan reached for it. She pulled away. Don't. That word changed the atmosphere. Ethan's voice became dangerously quiet. Is it Lucas? Mia said nothing. His silence was answer enough. Lucas Reed. You knew about him? I knew you had an ex. I didn't know you were still talking to him. We barely talk. But you lied. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you. To me, that's the same thing. Mia looked away. In truth, her secrecy was not innocent. She had hidden Lucas because she feared Ethan's jealousy, but she also knew Ethan deserved to understand her history. Lucas had once been important to her. Their relationship had ended after they wanted different futures, and eventually they became friends. There had been no affair, no secret meetings, no promise of reconciliation, but Mia understood how it could look. Ethan did not care about the distinction. You married me while keeping another man in your life, he said. Lucas is not another man. He's someone I used to know. Then why hide him? Because I knew you'd react like this. Ethan laughed bitterly. So this is my fault? Mia's eyes filled with tears. I just want you to trust me. Trust is earned. And control is not trust. Ethan stepped closer. Be careful. Mia backed away. The argument eventually ended without another confrontation, but the tension remained inside the villa like smoke. That night, Ethan fell asleep quickly. Mia stayed awake. She picked up her phone and opened Lucas's conversation. Her fingers trembled as she typed. Something is wrong. I don't know what to do. She stared at the words. Then she sent them. Seconds later, fear overwhelmed her. Mia deleted the message and cleared the conversation. She placed the phone beneath her pillow. Beside her, Ethan shifted in his sleep. Mia closed her eyes, but she could not rest. She had just erased the only message that might have told someone the truth. And she did not know that the danger inside the villa was about to become much harder to hide. The message Mia had erased stayed with her through the following morning. She kept wondering whether Lucas had somehow seen it before it disappeared, whether he might try to contact her, and whether Ethan would notice. Every question made her more anxious. That afternoon, Ethan suggested moving into a private villa farther from the main resort. It'll be more romantic, he said. Just you and me. Mia agreed because refusing felt harder than accepting. The villa was beautiful. It stood behind thick tropical gardens, with a private entrance, a small pool, and windows overlooking the ocean. Yet within hours, the luxury began to feel like isolation. There were no guests nearby. No voices drifted from neighboring rooms. Even the resort pathways seemed distant. Mia realized that if she needed help, she would have to leave the villa first. Ethan seemed pleased with the privacy. He unpacked their bags while Mia stood near the window. This is perfect, he said. Mia forced a smile. Yes, perfect. That evening, Ethan brought up Lucas again. You deleted something, didn't you? Mia turned. What are you talking about? Your phone. I told you. There was nothing important. Ethan's jaw tightened. You think I'm stupid? No. You think I don't know when my wife is hiding something? Mia felt the familiar pressure rising inside her. I should have told you about Lucas. Ethan stared at her. So you admit it. I admit I should have told you. That's all. How long have you been talking to him? Occasionally. Behind my back? Yes. But not because I was cheating. Ethan laughed without humor. You expect me to believe that? I never cheated on you. You kept another man's secret during our marriage. Our marriage had barely started. And already you're humiliating me. Mia shook her head. This isn't about humiliation. You're angry because you can't control everything I do. The words landed heavily. Ethan stepped closer. Don't tell me what I am. Then stop treating me like property. For a moment, neither moved. Then Ethan grabbed her arm. Mia gasped and tried to pull away. Let go of me. His grip tightened. The argument exploded into violence. Ethan shoved her, and Mia stumbled against the furniture. She tried to protect herself, but he struck her. The room became a blur of fear, movement, and broken silence. Then suddenly Ethan stopped. He stared at Mia as if he had only just realized what he had done. She stood shaking, one hand pressed against her injured arm. Ethan's anger vanished. Oh God! He stepped backward. Mia, I'm sorry. She said nothing. I didn't mean to hurt you. You did. I know. He dropped to his knees. "Please don't leave me." Mia looked at him, unable to understand how the same man who had frightened her moments earlier could now appear devastated. "I love you," he whispered. "I swear this will never happen again." Mia wanted to believe him. She wanted the honeymoon, the marriage, and the future she had imagined to still exist. So she nodded. For that night, she accepted his apology. Later, Ethan fell asleep beside her. Mia remained awake. Carefully, she lifted her phone and photographed the darkening bruise around her arm. She took another picture, then another, making sure the evidence was clear. She hid the photographs in a private folder and placed the phone beneath her pillow. Outside, waves rolled quietly against the shore. Inside, Mia stared into the darkness. She had crossed a line she never imagined crossing. She was no longer simply uncomfortable with her husband. She was afraid of him, and somewhere beneath that fear, a new question began forming. If Ethan could hurt her once, how far would he go the next time? She did not know those photographs would later become important evidence. But tonight they were proof that she had not imagined what had happened to her. The photographs became Mia's private record of a marriage that was already beginning to frighten her. She kept them hidden, along with brief recordings of Ethan's arguments, in places she believed he would never search. She saved some files beneath ordinary photographs and moved others to an account Ethan did not know existed. She was careful because Ethan had become unpredictable. After hurting her, he could spend hours behaving like the husband Mia had believed she married. He brought her breakfast, kissed her forehead, and apologized repeatedly. He told her she was the love of his life. "I would never want to lose you," he whispered. Mia wanted to believe him, but the tenderness never lasted. A question about Lucas could turn affectionate words into accusations within seconds. If Mia refused to answer immediately, Ethan called her dishonest. If she stepped outside alone, he wanted to know where she had been. If she received a message, he demanded to know who had sent it. Once, after Mia mentioned telling someone about the bruise on her arm, Ethan's expression changed. "Think carefully," he said. Mia stared at him. "What does that mean?" "It means people will believe whatever story sounds convincing." Her stomach tightened. Ethan continued quietly. "You could tell everyone I hurt you, but what happens when they hear about Lucas? What happens when they hear that you lied to me?" Mia felt trapped. "You're threatening me." "No, I'm warning you." That distinction became one of Ethan's favorite defenses. He never seemed to admit that he was threatening her. He simply described consequences and left Mia to imagine them. Still, she continued documenting everything. One night, she recorded part of an argument while pretending to check a message. Another morning, she photographed a fresh mark near her shoulder. She wrote dates and short descriptions in a hidden note. She knew she was taking a risk. If Ethan discovered the evidence, she did not know what he might do, so she hid copies separately. Meanwhile, the resort continued around them as though nothing had changed. Guests laughed beside the pool. Couples walked toward the beach holding hands. Staff members smiled professionally. To everyone else, Mia and Ethan were simply another honeymooning couple. One cloudy morning, Mia escaped the villa while Ethan was sleeping. She walked toward the quieter garden area, wearing sunglasses to hide the swelling around her eye. For the first time in days, she could breathe. Then a familiar voice interrupted her. "Mia." She turned. Leilani stood nearby carrying a small stack of towels. Leilani looked at the sunglasses, then at Mia's face. "Are you feeling okay?" Mia smiled automatically. "Yes, I'm fine." Leilani did not move. "You don't look fine." Mia lowered her eyes. For several seconds, she considered telling the truth. She could tell Leilani about the arguments. She could show her the photographs. She could ask her to call someone. Her lips parted. Footsteps sounded behind her. Mia froze. Ethan had appeared at the end of the path. His expression was calm. "Everything okay?" Leilani looked from Ethan to Mia. Mia swallowed. "Yes," she said quickly. "Everything is fine." Ethan smiled. "Good." Leilani nodded slowly, but her eyes remained on Mia. As the couple walked away, Mia glanced back once. Leilani was still watching. For the first time, someone outside the marriage had seen enough to know that Mia's smile was a lie. That afternoon, Ethan became unusually affectionate, almost as if he sensed what Mia had nearly revealed. He held her hand and spoke softly about their future, but Mia noticed his fingers tightening whenever she looked away for too long. And Mia had no idea how long she could keep that lie alive. The lie Mia had told Leilani followed her back to the villa. For the rest of the afternoon, she moved carefully around Ethan, studying his moods and choosing her words. He seemed unusually affectionate, but Mia no longer trusted tenderness that arrived after fear. Every gentle touch reminded her of the bruise hidden beneath her sleeve. That evening, Ethan suggested dinner inside the villa. "Just us," he said. Mia agreed. The meal began quietly. Candles flickered on the table, and the distant sound of waves drifted through the open doors. Ethan poured himself another drink. Mia barely touched hers. For several minutes, they talked about ordinary things. Then her phone vibrated. Mia glanced down. Another message from Lucas. She did not open it. Ethan noticed immediately. "Who is that?" "No one." His eyes narrowed. "You're doing it again." "I'm not doing anything. Give me the phone." Mia held it against her chest. "No." Ethan stood. "Mia, I said no." The calm atmosphere disappeared. Ethan accused her of lying, hiding Lucas, and making a fool of him. Mia tried to explain that the message meant nothing, but Ethan interrupted every sentence. "You never respected me. That isn't true. You married me while keeping secrets. I told you I never cheated. You expect me to believe that?" Mia finally stopped defending herself. "No, I don't expect anything from you anymore." Ethan stared at her. "What does that mean?" "It means I want to go home." The words seemed to strike him harder than any accusation. "You're leaving me?" "I need to leave this marriage." Ethan's face hardened. "After everything I've done for you? You hurt me. I apologized. That doesn't erase it. You're destroying everything." Mia stepped toward the door. "I am trying to save myself." Ethan moved between her and the exit. The argument became a storm. A chair scraped violently across the floor. A glass struck the ground and shattered. Mia cried out and tried to reach the door, but Ethan grabbed her. She struggled. "Let me go." He refused. The room filled with the sounds of their struggle, broken objects, frightened cries, and Ethan's furious voice. Mia tried to protect herself and escape toward the hallway, but every attempt failed. Then came a sudden silence. The kind of silence that felt impossible after so much noise. Ethan stood frozen. Mia lay motionless on the floor. For several seconds, he simply stared. "Mia." There was no answer. He crouched beside her and touched her shoulder. Nothing. His breathing became rapid. "Oh God." He looked toward the phone, the broken glass, and the overturned chair. He knew something terrible had happened. He also knew that calling for help would mean explaining everything. Instead of reaching for the phone immediately, Ethan began thinking about what other people would see. He looked at his hands. He looked at Mia. Then he looked around the villa. The first thought that came to him was not how to save her. It was how to save himself. He imagined police questions, photographs, witnesses, and the messages from Lucas. He imagined Mia's family learning what had happened. His mind began constructing a story. Maybe she had fallen. Maybe they had argued and she attacked him first. Maybe she had lost control. He repeated each possibility silently, searching for one that could explain the scene without exposing him. He wiped his face and walked toward the bathroom, then stopped when he noticed a mark on the mirror. His reflection looked unfamiliar. A thought surfaced. Call someone. Get an ambulance. Tell them what happened. But fear buried it. He returned to Mia and checked whether she was breathing. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he whispered. The words sounded less like grief than a defense. He picked up the phone, stared at the emergency screen, and hesitated. Then he opened another screen instead. He began deleting messages. One by one, he tried to erase evidence of life that led them here, believing that if he controlled the story, he could control the consequences. But outside the villa, someone had begun noticing that something was wrong. Outside, the Pacific continued moving beneath the moonlight. Inside, Ethan stood over his wife and made a decision that would change everything. He would not tell the truth. He would tell a story. The lie Ethan had chosen became the only thing holding him together. He wiped his face, straightened his shirt, and called the resort desk. His voice shook as he told the operator that his wife had fallen and was not responding. He repeated the word accident several times, as if saying it often enough could make it true. Within minutes, footsteps approached the villa. Emergency personnel entered quickly. Their movements were controlled, professional, and urgent. Ethan stood near the doorway, looking devastated. "I don't know what happened," he said. "We argued, and then she fell." One responder examined Mia while another asked Ethan to step aside. The silence that followed felt different. They attempted to revive her, but nothing changed. Eventually, one of them lowered his eyes. Mia Calloway was pronounced dead. Ethan covered his face with both hands. For anyone watching from a distance, he looked like a grieving husband whose world had collapsed. But the people inside the villa were not watching from a distance. They were examining details. A broken piece of furniture did not fit Ethan's explanation. The position of objects suggested movement rather than a simple fall. The injuries visible on Mia's body raised questions that an accident could not easily answer. One responder quietly exchanged a look with a colleague. Ethan noticed. "Is something wrong?" "We'll need to speak with you," the responder said. "Of course." Ethan nodded quickly. He repeated his story again. Mia had been upset. They had argued. She had moved suddenly. She fell. Each repetition sounded slightly different. By the time local authorities arrived, Ethan had already told the story several times. Then Detective Rachel Bennett entered the investigation. Rachel had spent years learning that the first version of a story was rarely the complete one. She entered the villa without speaking much, allowing the room to reveal what people often tried to hide. Her eyes moved across the broken glass, overturned furniture, and the quiet body beneath the medical sheet. Then she looked at Ethan. He appeared exhausted. "My wife was everything to me," he said. Rachel listened. "We were happy," Ethan continued. "She was emotional sometimes. She could be unstable, difficult even, but I loved her." Rachel's expression remained neutral. "Difficult how?" Ethan hesitated. "She had moods. She worried too much. She could become irrational." Rachel wrote something in her notebook. "Did she ever threaten you?" "No." "Did she ever attack you?" Ethan paused. "No, not really." The answer caught her attention. "Not really. I mean, we had arguments. Married couples do." Rachel looked toward the villa. "What happened tonight?" Ethan described the argument again, but details shifted. First, Mia had supposedly slipped. Then he said she had stumbled while trying to leave. Later, he suggested she might have lost her balance during the struggle. Rachel noticed every change. She also noticed how often Ethan used words that described Mia's personality instead of the events surrounding her death. Emotional, unstable, difficult. Those words bothered Rachel. They sounded less like memories and more like preparation. She had seen it before. A person accused of violence quietly rewriting the victim's character until the victim appeared responsible for what happened. Rachel closed her notebook. "Mr. Calloway, I need you to stay available while we continue investigating." Ethan nodded. "Of course." As he looked away, Rachel studied him for another moment. She was no longer asking whether Mia had simply fallen. She was asking a more troubling question. Was Ethan trying to turn the dead woman into the suspect? And if so, what was he trying so desperately to hide? The ocean remained calm, indifferent to the death inside. Rachel knew appearances could deceive, but evidence rarely stayed silent forever for long. The question Rachel had asked Ethan stayed with her as investigators began processing the villa. She had seen enough suspicious scenes to know that rooms could preserve what frightened people tried to erase. The search started quietly. Every object was photographed before being moved. Broken glass was collected. Furniture was examined. Clothing was separated and documented. Investigators checked drawers, closets, cabinets, and every place where something might have been hidden. Then one investigator found a second phone. It was tucked beneath folded clothing inside a drawer. Rachel recognized Mia's name on the case file. The phone was locked, but technicians eventually accessed it. Inside were photographs of bruises, short recordings, and notes describing arguments with Ethan. The dates formed a disturbing pattern. The injuries had become more frequent. The threats had become more direct. The fear had become part of Mia's daily life. Rachel looked at the photographs in silence. "This wasn't one night," she said. An investigator nodded. "No, it was building." The evidence suggested that Ethan had not simply lost control during one argument. He had gradually isolated Mia, questioned her relationships, monitored her communication, and used fear to make her doubt herself. Then Rachel remembered Leilani. The resort employee was brought in for an interview. At first, Leilani looked nervous. "I didn't know if I should say anything," she admitted. "You did the right thing by coming forward," Rachel said. Leilani described the morning she had seen Mia wearing sunglasses beneath the cloudy sky. She explained how Mia had seemed frightened and how she had almost asked for help. "She started to say something," Leilani said. "Then Ethan appeared." "What happened?" "She immediately told me everything was fine." Rachel asked what she had noticed about Ethan. Leilani hesitated. "He wasn't angry. That's what frightened me. He was calm." Rachel wrote that down. Another witness came forward later that day. She remembered seeing Mia near the beach several days earlier. Mia had been crying and appeared to be arguing with someone on the phone. "She kept looking around," the witness recalled, "like she was afraid someone would see her." Piece by piece, Rachel reconstructed the honeymoon, the expensive dinners, the private villa, the arguments about Lucas, the demands for Mia's phone, the bruises, the apologies, the threats, the isolation. Nothing existed separately anymore. Together they formed a pattern. Ethan had repeatedly frightened Mia, then offered affection as though tenderness could erase what came before. When she resisted, he accused her of betrayal. When she considered leaving, he threatened the consequences. Rachel returned to the phone recovered from the villa. Technicians were examining deleted data. Hours later, one of them called her over. "We found something." A deleted message had been recovered. Rachel read the words slowly. "Something is wrong. I don't know what to do." For several seconds, nobody spoke. The message had been sent to Lucas shortly before Mia's death. Rachel knew immediately what it meant. Mia had been frightened enough to reach outside the marriage for help. She had tried to communicate, then apparently deleted the message because she feared Ethan discovering it. Rachel looked again at the timeline. The message changed everything. Ethan had described a sudden accident caused by an argument. But Mia's phone told another story. This was not simply a tragic night that spiraled unexpectedly. It was the final stage of a longer progression of control, jealousy, intimidation, and violence. Rachel closed the file. "Find Lucas," she said, because now there was someone who might know what Mia had been trying to escape. And somewhere in the evidence, Rachel believed, was the answer to the question Ethan could not explain. Why had Mia been so afraid of her own husband? The investigation had moved beyond the question of what happened inside the villa. Now it was becoming a search for everything Ethan had tried to bury before the truth reached the surface. The search for Lucas had begun when Ethan's version of the night started falling apart. Rachel returned to the interview room with an evidence folder. Ethan sat across from her, controlled. "You told responders Mia fell," Rachel said. "She did. You later said she stumbled while trying to leave." Ethan looked down. "I was confused. And then you said she attacked you." "She was angry." Rachel opened the folder. "We found photographs of previous injuries." Ethan's face tightened. "They were nothing. We found recordings too." Silence. Rachel placed another photograph on the table. "You told us this was an accident." The evidence says otherwise. Ethan leaned back. You don't understand what happened between us. Then explain it. He said nothing. Finally, his story changed again. Mia had pushed him. She had screamed at him. She had threatened to leave. He had only tried to stop her. Rachel listened without interrupting. Then she asked, "So you did put your hands on her?" Ethan swallowed. I lost control. It was his closest approach to truth. But even then, he immediately tried to soften it. I never meant to kill her. Rachel looked directly at him. Intent doesn't erase what you did. I loved her. You loved her. Yes. Then why was she afraid of you? Ethan had no answer. Rachel continued. You controlled who she spoke to. You questioned her phone. You isolated her. You threatened her when she talked about leaving. You assaulted her, apologized, and then repeated the same pattern. That isn't fair. It isn't supposed to be fair. Ethan stared at the table. Rachel leaned forward. You keep talking about whether you planned her death. That's not the only question. He looked up. What other question is there? How did you become the person who believed you had the right to control her? Ethan said nothing. The investigation widened beyond Hawaii. Detectives contacted people who had known Ethan before his marriage to Mia. At first, the responses seemed ordinary. Then patterns emerged. An old girlfriend described Ethan as intensely jealous. He always needed to know where I was, she said, who I was with, who had called me. Another former partner remembered his apologies after arguments. He could make you feel like everything was your fault, she explained. Then he'd become incredibly loving afterward. A former coworker described Ethan as charming in public but possessive in private relationships. Rachel listened to each account and compared them with what investigators had already discovered. The same pattern kept appearing. Control, jealousy, manipulation, apologies, fear. The names changed. The behavior did not. When Ethan was confronted with the statements, he dismissed them. They're bitter. Every one of them? They misunderstood me. Rachel watched him carefully. He still spoke as though the problem was how other people perceived him, not what he had done to them. Then investigators recovered additional digital evidence showing Ethan had monitored Mia's communications and searched for information about Lucas before the honeymoon argument. His story was becoming impossible to maintain. The accident had become an assault. The assault had become a pattern. And the pattern had existed long before Mia. Ethan finally understood what the detectives were investigating. They were no longer asking what happened on one terrible night. They were asking who he had been before that night. Rachel closed the folder. You keep telling us this was one mistake. Ethan stared at her. Rachel stood. We're beginning to think it was the latest one. She left the room, leaving Ethan completely alone with the evidence. Outside, investigators continued the timeline. Inside, Ethan finally realized that the truth was no longer trapped inside the villa. It was following him, and soon someone would have to answer for every warning he had ignored. The investigation eventually moved from the quiet villa to a courtroom filled with people who had never known Mia. Her family arrived in Hawaii carrying photographs from another life. In those pictures, Mia was laughing at birthdays, standing beside friends, holding a graduation certificate, and smiling without fear. They showed the woman she had been before Ethan. Rachel watched them enter and understood that the case was no longer only about evidence. It was about a person. The prosecution began. Photographs of Mia's injuries were introduced. Investigators described the hidden phone, recordings, and notes she had secretly kept. Leilani testified about seeing Mia frightened near the resort garden. Another witness described seeing her distressed days earlier. Then came the phone records. Messages between Mia and Lucas showed that she had been searching for help, not secretly planning a new relationship. Finally, prosecutors presented Ethan's statements. First, Mia had fallen. Then she had stumbled. Then she had attacked him. Eventually, Ethan admitted that he had lost control. The defense challenged the prosecution's interpretation. They argued that the death had followed an emotional confrontation between two people whose marriage was already under severe strain. Ethan had not planned to kill Mia, they said. He had acted recklessly during an argument and never intended the outcome. Rachel listened silently. The defense focused on one question. What had Ethan intended? Rachel kept thinking about everything before. The courtroom grew quiet when Mia's recovered message appeared on the screen. Something is wrong. I don't know what to do. Mia's mother lowered her head. Her father stared at the screen without moving. Rachel watched their faces as the words were read aloud. Those words outweighed Ethan's explanations. Mia had been frightened. She had tried to reach someone. She had recognized that something was wrong. Later, Mia's sister took the witness stand. Her voice shook as she described the woman she remembered. Mia wasn't perfect, she said. She kept things to herself sometimes, but she loved deeply. She always believed people could change. The hardest part isn't only that she's gone. It's knowing she was scared and tried to tell someone. The courtroom became silent. Rachel looked toward Ethan. For the first time, he appeared smaller than the man who had controlled the story. When Ethan finally chose to speak, he described his grief. I loved my wife, he said. I never wanted her to die. He blamed the argument, the alcohol, the pressure of the honeymoon, and Mia's decision to leave. I was overwhelmed. Everything happened so quickly. Rachel listened. Every sentence placed responsibility elsewhere. Ethan admitted hurting Mia but insisted he had never intended to kill her. I made one terrible mistake. Mia's father looked down. Rachel understood why the words sounded empty. One mistake could not explain the hidden photographs. One mistake could not explain the threats. One mistake could not explain the fear recorded in Mia's final days. The prosecution reminded the court that the evidence showed escalation, not an isolated moment. Ethan had choices. He could have walked away. He could have called for help. He could have told the truth immediately. Instead, he had tried to construct a story. Now that story was being dismantled publicly, piece by piece. As the hearing ended, Mia's family remained seated. There was no victory waiting for them. Only grief, unanswered questions, and the knowledge that justice could punish the person responsible without bringing Mia back. Rachel gathered her files and looked toward the photographs. The woman smiling in those pictures seemed impossibly far away. But her story had finally been heard. The courtroom doors opened. Ethan was led away. And beyond those doors, the final decision waited. The courtroom doors closed behind Ethan, but for Mia's family, the story did not end there. Later, the judge delivered the sentence. Ethan stood silently as the consequences were finally spoken aloud. No final explanation could change what had happened. The sentence could punish him, but it could not return Mia to the people who loved her. Her family left Hawaii carrying photographs, belongings, and grief that would follow them home. At the airport, Mia's mother looked through one final picture. Mia was smiling beside the ocean, her hair lifted by the wind. It was the same ocean surrounding the resort. She should have come home with us, her mother whispered. No one answered. Back at the resort, life slowly returned to normal. Guests arrived with suitcases and cameras. Couples walked through the gardens. Music played near the pool. Employees returned to their routines. Leilani continued working, but she never forgot the morning Mia had stood beneath the cloudy sky wearing sunglasses. Sometimes Leilani passed the secluded villa and slowed down. The building still looked beautiful. Flowers grew along the path. Palm trees moved gently in the wind. Yet Leilani knew what had happened behind that door. Luxury had hidden fear. Privacy had hidden violence. And a place designed for romance had become a crime scene. Rachel carried the case differently. Mia's death remained with her because the warning signs had appeared long before the final night. Isolation, jealousy, control, emotional manipulation, apologies followed by violence, threats disguised as warnings, and, perhaps most tragically, the gradual loss of confidence in the person being controlled. Rachel remembered how Mia had said everything was fine when Leilani asked if she needed help. She remembered the photographs hidden inside the villa. She remembered the deleted message. Something is wrong. I don't know what to do. Those words stayed with Rachel. Mia had known something was wrong. She had felt the danger. She had tried to reach outside the marriage. Fear had made her hesitate. That hesitation was not weakness. It was part of the trap. Rachel understood that abusive relationships rarely begin with obvious violence. They can begin with questions that sound like concern, jealousy disguised as love, apologies that create hope, and control that slowly becomes normal. By the time the victim understands the pattern, leaving can feel more frightening than staying. Mia had reached that point. The person she trusted most became the person she needed protection from. And when she finally understood the danger, she was already trapped behind a door she once believed represented happiness. Months later, Rachel returned to Hawaii for another investigation. She drove past the resort but did not enter. The Pacific was still blue. The palm trees still moved beneath the warm wind. Tourists still photographed sunsets. The paradise remained unchanged. But Rachel had. She thought about Mia and the question hidden inside that final message. What do I do? There was no answer in time. That was the tragedy. Mia had not needed another promise from Ethan. She had needed someone to hear her fear before it became a final warning. The waves continued breaking against the shore as Rachel watched the horizon. Somewhere behind her, the resort carried on. Others carried memories that would never disappear. For Mia's family, Hawaii would never simply be a beautiful destination again. It would always be the place where love became control, where control became violence, and where a honeymoon became a crime scene. The photographs remained. The evidence remained. The memory would remain. And long after the courtroom emptied, Mia's unanswered question would remain suspended in the silence. What do I do? There was no answer that could bring her back. Only a warning for those who might recognize the signs before it was too late. Because sometimes the most dangerous place is not the darkest street or an abandoned building. Sometimes it is the beautiful room behind a locked door, where everyone outside believes you are living your dream.